Hello and welcome to the Tech Guy off the radio live stream podcast. Sorry about the slight delay. There was a issue with the live stream, which has just now been resolved. Um, I'm going to have to retweet this out. Let me try and retweet this out so that people can see it. Let's see. Throw that. I'm gonna have to throw that back in over here so that people can see it. Since something went wrong, which is a small I'm sure it's just a tiny coincidence, of course, that everything went wrong just as we were getting started, and it happens. Okay. I think about these things. Okay, we're back. We're back up and running. Welcome again to the Tech Guy off the radio live stream podcast. I am your host, Pete the Tech Guy. I'm wishing you, first of all, a very happy, a very, very happy 4th of July. So let's begin. I had today's podcast all planned. I was ready. I had my topic set. I was going to go all in on what's going to be topic 2 for today, which was comparing the statue protesters with a parable in the Bible. That was going to be my thing. That was going to be the lead. That was what we were going to talk about first. And then I ran into a story. And the reason why this particular story jumped out at me was because my wife is a nurse. My wife has been a nurse we've been married 32 years. She's been a nurse for like 33, 34 years. She's been a nurse for a very long time. So every day I hear nursing stories when I come home from work, and she's just coming home from work and so forth. So I am very familiar with how things work in nursing. And during the course of the day, I ran into a story. There's a series of different blogs that I read. And one of the blogs I read is Legal Insurrection, which is one of the great blogs. There are some blogs that are just great blogs. Instapundit is a great blog. There are many others that are just plain great blogs. And this blog, Legal Insurrection, is one of the great blogs. And of course, the head of Legal Insurrection, person in charge, has been getting a lot of grief lately. An awful lot of grief. And the reason why he's been getting an awful lot of grief is because he's been totally, how do I say this? He has been totally fearless in the face of all of the left trying to intimidate him concerning Black Lives Matter and all of that stuff. He won't give up, he won't back down. But that's his nature, not to give up and not to back down. Well, today I was at his site, and I saw a story that jumped out at me. And it, like I said, my wife is a nurse, so it jumped out at me very, very, very big. And this is the story that he had. It's Umass Lowell Nursing Dean reportedly fired after saying everyone's life matters in an email. Quote, the university ended the employment of Dr. Neil Bolin on June 19th after 10 months as a role in the deal of the Solomon School of Nursing. As with all such decisions, it was made in the best interest of the university and its students. Quote, the cancel culture that is rampant in American college campuses right now has claimed another victim. A nursing dean at the University of Massachusetts Lowell has reportedly been fired after saying in an email that everyone's life matters. When does this end? Addison Smith reports at Campus Reform. Exclusive. University dean fired after saying everyone's lives matters in email. University of Massachusetts Lowell Dean of Nursing Leslie Neal Boylan issued an email on June 2nd at the Solomon School of Nursing in light of the recent anti-racism demonstrations across the country. Sources told Campus Reform in the message, Neal Boylan told students that everyone's life matters. Days later, Neil Bolin was out of a job. The sources shared with Campus Report the email which Neil Bolin was allegedly fired. Quote, I'm writing to express my concern and condemnation of the recent and past acts of violence against people of color, Neil Bolin wrote in an email. Recent events recall a tragic history of racism and bias that continue to thrive in this country and despair for our future as a nation if we do not stand up against violence against anyone, she added. Dear SSON community, the email provided to the Campus Reform begins, I'm writing to express my concern and commendation of the recent and past acts of violence, this seems to repeat itself. If we do not stand up against Black Lives Matter, but also everyone's lives matter. No one should have to live in fear that they will be targeted of how they look or what they believe, the provided email said. A student who received the email posted the copy on Twitter with a message stating it was upsetting. An upsetting statement made by the Dean of Nursing at Umass Lowell, including the statement, all lives matter, was uncalled for and shows the narrow-minded people in lead positions. A sad day to be a nursing student at UML. Dean Leslie Neil Bolin, your words will not be forgotten. Now, this went out to nursing students, and this Haley Black Lives Matter person is a nursing student. Now, maybe it's just me, but I am not a black, as you can see, I am not a black person. I am a kind of gray bearded person, but I'm not a black person. And I'm sure that Haley, as a nursing student, is studying to be a good nurse. Now, the real question is this. Does Haley believe all lives matter? If Haley becomes a nurse and goes for a license, will she decide that some lives matter and some lives don't? Will she treat a person because of the color of their skin? Will she treat a person differently because of the color of their skin? Will she decide that some lives, the person who needs a treatment, some person who needs their meds, some person who falls, will she believe that some of those lives matter and some of them don't? Now, Umass Lowell saw that tweet and answered, Haley, thank you for bringing this to our attention. The university here is to believe Black Lives Matter. See what the chancellor sent out Monday. Now, Professor Jonathan Turley of George Washington University has commented on his blog, quote, University spokesman Christine Gillette issued a statement to the site Campus Reforms Wednesday stating that, quote, the university ended the employment of Dr. Neil Bolin on June 19th after 10 months in her role as dean of the Solomon School of Nursing. As with all such decisions, it was made in the best interest of the university and its students. While it is particularly concerning, what is particularly concerning is the June 19th letter reference on the site that was allegedly written by Neil Bolin and sent to Provost Julie Nash. The letter states that, quote, it is important to point out that no one ever gave me an opportunity to share my views or how the college and school were interacting, nor explain myself regarding the BLM email. My meeting with you, Dean Shorty McKinley, and Laura Turner was clearly not intended to give me an opportunity to defend my actions. I was condemned without trial. The statement from the university does not state what specifically is in the best interest of the university and students. However, the failure to specifically state the grounds of the process used to reach the decision is alarming. And one of the most disturbing aspects of the case, if you go to the university's webpage about Dean Leslie Neil Bolin, it is blank. She has already been erased. Professor Turley reached out to the school for comment and received a vague response. Quote, I contacted the university to confirm, quote, whether Neil Bolin was fired for her statement about everyone's lives matters and, quote, whether she was given an opportunity to hear the complaints against her and to contest the allegations. The university responded with a statement. Now, I want to point out something about this statement before I read it, because I have also reached out to the university. And I have also received a statement back from the same person that contacted Professor Turley. And the statement reads as follows, quote, Leslie Neil Bolin's employment at Umass Lowell ended June 19th after she was informed she would no longer serve as dean of the Solomon School of Nursing. She had been in that role for 10 months. Although a tenured faculty member, she declined to join the nursing faculty. As with all such employment decisions, it was made in the best interest of the university and its students. Although we are unable to discuss specifics of her personal nature, it would be incorrect to assume any statement by Dr. Neil Bolin was the cause of that decision. So the nursing school says after this statement, she is suddenly fired, but there is no We should not make that assumption. We should not assume at all that that statement has anything to do with her firing. So I reached out, I acknowledged the statement and sent her an email saying, as your statement says, thanking her for her response. And I sent out an email saying, as your statement says, it would be, quote, incorrect to assume any statement by Dr. Neil Bolin was the cause of that decision. I'd like to give Umass Lowell the chance before broadcast to make it clear that they are teaching future nurses in their program that all the patients in their care are entitled to equal treatment. So I would like to ask the following. Quote, number one, is it the position of the nursing department of Umass Lowell that all lives matter? Number two, are the nursing students being taught that the nursing department being taught that all lives in their care matter? Now, those are the two questions I sent. And to continue the email, if it is incorrect to assume that the dean's email stating that all lives matter is the reason for her firing, then these questions should be easy to answer. I will incorporate the answer to these questions or lack thereof into the show today. Well, I sent out that email at 1:27 p.m., under 3 minutes after receiving the email from Christine M. Gillette. Haven't gotten an answer. So, Umass Lowell, official spokesman, does not find it comfortable to state that it is the position of the nursing department, the department that's in charge of treating ill people, people who will, the department that is in charge of training nurses who will treat people of all races, of all nationalities, that all of those lives matter. At least they are not able to respond to that. Now, that would seem an easy question to answer. It would seem to me fairly easy for a nursing department to decide that all people's lives matter. At least that would be to me, seem to me. Now, it would also seem to me a very easy thing. Now, I'm setting up the thing because I want to tweet something out here to try and get a few more eyeballs. It would also seem to me fairly simple for a nursing department to state that their students are being taught that all of their patients' lives matter. Now, if a nursing department is not teaching that, that would seem to be a problem. At least I think that would be a problem. Okay, now let me type something out. Now, talking the failure of Umass Lowell to answer these questions about their nursing department. Question 1. Is it the position of the nursing URSI department of Umass Lowell that all lives matter? Let's see. And again, I apologize for the pause here because I want to get this tweeted out. Are the nursing students being taught that all lives in their care? Talking questions to Umass Lowell. I'm going to try and fit this all in one tweet so I can get the thing out. I think I've lost a few views because of that problem we had at the start of the show where the live feed wouldn't kick in. There we go. That fits. Now we're out. So again, the question becomes, does UMass Lowell teach their nursing students that all lives matter? Do they teach that all the patients in their care matter? Or do they not? Now, if they don't, if I'm a hospital or if I'm a nursing home, I might be very, very hesitant to hire a nursing student from UMass Lowell. Because the moment, and again, you have to realize what happens at a nursing home. Think about a nursing home for a second. There are a lot of people who are in frail position in a nursing home. Some in bad shape, some in mediocre shape, some with mental issues, some without mental issues, some with physical issues, all kinds of issues that these people have. And these people have families. And of course, these families are all counting on their care being proper. And again, I'm using a nursing home as an example because it's a long-term care. A person in a nursing home is usually in there for a long period of time. So I wonder what happens if one of those families decide that the care their parent or loved one is getting is not being done sufficiently because the nurse does not believe that person's life matters. What happens when people go in for operations and the patient who's going to be operated on does not know or thinks that the person doing the operation or the nurse is assisting in the operation may not think their life matters because of their race? What happens to a doctor or a hospital or if they try and get insurance? If patients start deciding that because of their political opinions or because of how they voted, that the hospital staff did not do their utmost because they did not think that life mattered. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think? Now, I think such a hospital that hires a nurse from a program that is unwilling to state that all lives matter might have to worry about lawsuits. I think that the staff at a hospital or nursing home that hires people from a program that's not willing to say that all lives matter might have issues getting insurance for their people. And I think a corporation that is very conscious of lawsuits might be very worried about that. Well, of course, this is just one place. So I took the liberty of contacting the licensing board in Massachusetts. I gave them a call today, and I was directed to the voicemail of the person in charge of media contacts. And I asked them in the message, is it the policy of them to license people as medical practitioners in the state of Massachusetts who are not unequivocally willing to state that all lives matter? And if all lives don't matter, will the state licensing board let us know which lives don't matter? Which lives it's acceptable for people to decline to think matters? Because I think that would be very, very interesting. I think it would be good to know if people coming out of a medical school and getting a license believe that all lives matter. Because if they don't believe that all lives matter, then they believe that some lives don't. And if they believe that some lives don't, the question is, for a patient and for a patient's family, does your life matter? Now, some might think, Peter, why are you spending so much time on this? Why is this so important? Well, think about this for a second. What happens to the hospital system when the patients decide that the doctors are going to treat them based on their political opinions? What happens to the insurance companies once they discover that some doctors and some nurses and some institutions will provide treatment based on political opinion, or that they believe that some lives don't matter and some don't? And let's not stop at the medical community. What happens if your mechanic repairs your brakes based on whether or not your political beliefs are correct? What happens if the person spreading pesticide, let's say you have a lawn company that puts out pesticide to take care of pests? What happens if they spread their pesticides based on whether or not they think your life matters or not? What happens? And think about all these things. What happens if the person serving you food decides whether or not it's going to be cooked safely or not based on your political beliefs? Now, the interesting thing is we've had this before in the United States. It was called Jim Crow. So now we are actually reaching a point where hospitals and insurance companies and maybe even state licensing boards are introducing a Jim Crow-like mentality where all lives don't matter. Think about it. If you are a nursing school and you cannot state unequivocally that your nurses are being taught that all lives matter, then that means your nurses are being taught that some lives don't. Do you want to be that patient? Would you take a chance on that nurse? Would you take a chance on that nurse? Would you put your parent, your spouse, your child in a hospital or a medical facility where that life does not matter? Now, myself, I would want an unequivocal statement from nursing homes, from hospitals, from urgent care centers, from facilities that teach nursing, that all patients matter. All patients' lives matter because all lives matter. Would you trust your life to someone who does not believe this? Would you trust your life to someone who is unwilling to state that your life matters? Would you? Should anyone be in that position? Do not people understand what this means? Has the universities become so woke, so wedded to the idea of being politically correct that they have forgotten the Hippocratic Oath? Now, granted, ever since the 60s, the Hippocratic Oath has been twisted and turned and edited. Perhaps the Hippocratic Oath should now be for the University of Massachusetts Nursing Center. All lives matter, but some matter more than others. Have we reached that point? Now, again, they have not given me a response to my 2 questions by this week's show, but I have another show in a week, and I'll ask if they answer it before then, I'll mention it. But if they don't, and if the licensing board doesn't, I'll mention that as well. In fact, we will start a countdown. And I think I'm going to start calling hospitals. I'm going to stop calling the press offices of hospitals and start asking them if they will state without equivocation that as far as this hospital is concerned, all lives matter, and that every patient who comes to that hospital will be given the care that they will be given care based on that simple principle. Now, that should be a very easy thing for a hospital to say, because that should be an assumption at a hospital. We should be assuming, you should be going to a hospital or medical center and assuming that your life matters to them. What happens if they won't say it? What happens if you're going into the emergency room and they're unwilling to say it? What happens if a patient refuses treatment if they're not willing to state categorically that their life matters? And what happens if that patient dies? Do you want to be the attending physician when that happens? Do you want to be the nurse on call when that happens? Do you want to be the person who has to deal with that lawsuit? Do you? Do you want to be the medical school that has stated or that refuses to state that all lives matter? This is a very, very important question because it matters to every single human being in the United States. Your life will depend on it someday. Someday your life is going to depend on whether or not the doctor, the nurse, the anesthesiologist, the attendants think your life matters. And until today, if you had a nursing patient from the Umass Lowell, you made that assumption without even thinking about it. You presumed, of course, they think my life matters. Or even if they don't think so, they will act as though my life matters. No, you can't make that assumption anymore. I think it should be a requirement of doctors and nurses to be licensed to state unequivocally that for them, all patients matter and all lives matter. I would not license a doctor or a nurse who will not state that. It's as simple as that. Because if you will not state that, you have no business treating people. You have no business being in a hospital. And the fact that I have had to devote a half hour of this podcast to this topic is disgraceful and disgusting. And the fact that I have not gotten a response that states unequivocally from Umass Lowell's nursing school that they believe that all lives matter and that they will teach their students, their nursing students, that all lives matter is disgraceful and disgusting. Now, maybe I'll hear about it afterwards. Maybe, excuse me, it's a holiday weekend. It's 3:30. Maybe that girl left. Didn't get a chance to see my email. Maybe the email got into the spam filter. It happens. Maybe they haven't seen my tweets on the subject. So we'll be here again next week. We'll be here next week. And we'll see if that email comes. Now, of course, I'm a small blogger. And I have a small podcast. Maybe Instapundit will find it interesting. And I don't have a lot of followers, but the New York Post follows me. I don't have a lot of followers, but Senator Ted Cruz follows me. And maybe, just maybe, some of those people might decide to ask whether doctors or nurses think that all lives matter. Now, I think that is a very, very important question. I think it's more important than any other question we're going to discuss here. Because politicians come and go. Elections come and go. But everyone lives and everyone dies. Most people are going to be born in a hospital. Do you want to have your baby delivered in a hospital where you don't know if your baby's life matters? or if your life matters? Do you want to go to a hospital or a nursing home with your life on the line, when you don't know that the hospital or nursing home believes that your life matters? There was a time not long ago where this wasn't a question. Now it is. So if you want to know why the Black Lives Matter movement is disgusting, this is why. This is why. And if you haven't figured that out, then the more fool you. Now we're going to go to topic number 2. And it was going to be my lead topic today before I got off on this. And topic number 2 has to do with statues. One of the things we've seen is the rush to change names, the rush to pull down statues, the rush to do all these things, the rush to change the name of the Redskins today. And I was thinking about that this week when I recorded my radio show. I do a live radio show called I should not say a recorded radio show for WQPH 89.3 FM, Shirley, Fitchburg, called Your Prayer Intentions, where I pray for the prayer intentions of various people who send me prayer intentions. Now, when I was thinking about this, thinking about what I was going to say on that show, what came to mind was a parable. And the parable was one of Jesus' parables about the Pharisee and the publican, the tax collector, basically. And this is a parable from the Gospel of Luke. I'm gonna read you some scripture. You probably did not expect this in this podcast because it normally doesn't happen in my secular podcasts. But this has to do with the statue protests and the Washington Redskins business. And this is a very, very important thing. It's astounding that we have reached this point. Now, and what's funny about this particular parable is that years ago, not too many years ago, I should say, everyone would know this story. I would just have to mention it, and you would know the story because people knew about Scripture, because it was the basis for Western civilization. This is from Luke chapter 18. He then addressed this parable for those who were convinced of their own righteousness and despised everybody else. Sound familiar? 2 people went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee took up his position and spoke this prayer to himself. "O God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income." For those of you who don't know what tithe is, 10%. That's how much people were expected to give to the church, to the temple. But the tax collector stood off at a distance and would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast and prayed, "O God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, the latter went home justified, not the former. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and who humbles himself will be exalted." Now think about what's been happening lately. Think about what is happening with the statues. What are these woke people saying? I thank you. Look at me. I am better than this person in that Confederate statue. I am better than Abe Lincoln in that statue. I am better than Ulysses Grant. For I never owned a slave. For I would not have done what they did in their time. They are exalting themselves, not for what they did, mind you, but by basically tearing down a statue is declaring, I am better than Christopher Columbus. I am better than St. Juniper Serra. And I can show that I am better than them by tearing down their statue. Now, the irony of this is, of course, that all of those statues were not put up. Lincoln did not have his statue put up. Jefferson did not arrange for the building of the Jefferson Memorial. Grant did not arrange for statues of himself to go up. Neither did Gandhi, whose statues are being attacked. But other people did, because they decided that the contributions that these people made were significant enough and meant enough to them to put up that statue. So those people weren't actually celebrating themselves. But these people are celebrating themselves. They are trying to make a public statement that I am better than you. And the great thing about this type of virtue signaling is they don't have to commit virtue. They don't have to free the slaves. They don't have to lead a war that freed the slaves. They don't have to, like Robert E. Lee, decide to surrender instead of fighting a guerrilla war and encourage other people to ask for pardon and get reintegrated into society. They do not, like Nathan Bedford Forrest, have to tell their troops, we're not going to commit a guerrilla war, or to or to quit the Ku Klux Klan when they became too violent, or to speak before a black audience and earn censure. They didn't have to do that. They did not have to, like Theodore Roosevelt, invite Booker T. Washington, a black leader, to dinner at the White House, which had never been done before. They did not have to, like Jefferson, state that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. They did not, like George Washington, have to decline a throne that he could have had for the taking. He would have been King George I. We would have a Washington dynasty right now. They don't have to do any of those things. No risk, no muss, no fuss. All they have to do is tear down a statue or cause a statue to be torn down. In fact, the example I gave you earlier about Umass, the person who sent out that tweet, that Haley from UMass, she does not have to be a nurse. She does not have to serve as a nursing student. She does not have to treat a patient. She can prove that she is worthy by complaining about a sentence from her dean and getting her fired. She does not have to practice virtue. None of these statue pullers have to practice virtue. They can be virtuous by declaring themselves better than the person in the statue. You do not have to achieve anything. You do not have to be great. You do not have to run a sports franchise. You can suddenly become virtuous by causing a franchise to rename itself. The virtue of the spoken word, the virtue of inaction. That's the virtue of the Pharisee. Now, the irony is, of course, that the Pharisee paid tithes, which is a good thing. And that the Pharisee fasted, which is a good thing. I'm sure that the Pharisee in that tale did good many times. But there's a reason why pride is the first of the deadly sins, not lust. Now, while some apparition, at least in one apparition of Our Lady, it is stated that more people go to hell for sins of the flesh than any other. Pride is listed first among the deadly sins. All of what you're seeing from Black Lives Matter, all that you're seeing from Chop and Chaz, all that you're seeing from any of this stuff is the manifestation of the sin of pride. I am better than you. I am better than them. I don't have to do anything to be better. I don't have to achieve anything to be better. I don't have to serve my fellow man. I don't have to take any risks. I don't have to do anything but want that statue down. And by that act alone, I am proving that I am better than you. I am proving my righteousness. It's the Pharisee and the tax collector. And it's the Pharisee and the tax collector that we're seeing all over the country. People haven't, and one of the things I've argued many times, although not so much on this podcast, but I argued on my radio show, my original DaTechGuy on the radio show, is that people aren't really different than they were 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, or 200 years ago. We may be able to, if someone farts in Uganda, someone will make a YouTube video to laugh about it. Or if someone makes a stray comment, it suddenly goes viral. Our tools are different, but human nature is not different. That's why that parable still has meat today to people. People aren't different. People all want to be better than they want. They want to be thought of big as being big. Cripes, when I questioned Donald Trump at press conferences, to me, that was a big thing. I thought it would make a difference. I wanted it to be big because I thought I'd be able to promote my site, make more money, and so forth. Didn't happen that way, but I wanted it. That's human nature. That's something I wanted, and I tried to get that by doing. These people don't have to try and do. They just have to talk. It's all because of talk. And it's a sad, sad state of affairs that we've reached this point. And what's really sad about it is all the things we've learned over the last few weeks concerning our country and ourselves as a nation. And I'm going to go through some of these things, Lord. Now, let's take a few things that we've started with right now. We've learned today that if you are a tenured professor of nursing and a dean of nursing, that if you state that all lives matter, which should be a given for a nurse, you can lose your job. And that your college will not back you up, not care about you. We have learned that a statue of Abe Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation and a freed slave is a racist symbol of white supremacy and must be removed. But we've also learned that naming an anti-Trump group the Lincoln Project is not only fine, but it deserves to be supported by all right-thinking people. Can't have a statue of Abraham Lincoln, but you can have an anti-Trump group called the Lincoln Project. That's all right. In fact, that's virtue signaling. We've learned in the last 30 days that a spike in the coronavirus or Wuhan virus or CCP virus, which, by the way, China never did report to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization backtracked on their statement that they had. That new spike that took place in the 2 weeks after mass gatherings encouraged by the press and by medical professionals, the same medical professionals who now are saying, oh, we can't say all lives matter. We've been told that they have nothing to do with those mass gatherings that were encouraged. Although now, actually today, I should correct that. The mayor of LA has now stated that, well, yeah, I think he's had something to do with it. But the same people who were telling us that it had nothing to do with these things, with the spikes in coronavirus, are telling us that going to a bar or restaurant at 25 or 50% capacity are hazardous to your health. Not mass gatherings of thousands of people together. We've learned over the last 30 days that if you suggest that leaving 30,000 residents of the city of Seattle to be ruled by the mob is bad, you're afraid of democracy. However, we've also learned that if that same mob protests in front of the house of the mayor who said that this was all right, that mob is going to be dispersed by all the power that the police can muster. We also learned, by the way, that it wasn't all that hard to get rid of Chaz or Chop, that it could have been done at any time. But that we can leave people, 30,000 people, mind you, under mob rule for several weeks in order to not make Donald Trump be right about a statement. We've learned that the killing of George Floyd during an arrest in Minneapolis is a national story worth national, yea, international protest, which is broken off all across the country. But we've also learned that the killings of Byron Crawford and 9 other blacks in Baltimore during the month of June, Michael Ornsby, and 8 other blacks in the city of LA during the month of June, and Joseph Gist and 64 other blacks in Chicago during the month of June are all local stories and not worthy of any kind of protest or outrage of any type. And as we've talked about, we have learned that if you're a person who breaks windows, topples statues, sets fires, you are expressing your First Amendment right to protest against violence and injustice. And as I was stating just before, are virtuous. You are the Pharisee. You are the Pharisee. Thank God I am not like these other people, that I am more moral than them. But if you're a homeowner who, when threatened by a mob that breaks through your gate, arms himself to defend family and property, you're a dangerous proponent of white supremacy, even if you're a Joe Biden supporter, even if you've given money to Black Lives Matter, even if you've done all those things, doesn't matter. That's what you are. Now, I want to talk about one more thing before we go. And before we get to that last topic, I do want to remind people who are watching that the reason I do this podcast is to increase traffic on the site. The site's DaTechGuyblog.com, and to try and increase my tip jar hits by about 180 a month. Last month, the traffic went up. The tip jar didn't. Hopefully, we'll do better this month. So if you like what you see, please pass it along. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, subscribe to it. Still a couple of hundred people away from monetizing it, so it can be monetized, and then a leftist can complain, and then I can be demonetized, obviously. So I think it's just better to hit the tip jar myself, because I'm presuming that once I reach a big enough audience, that I'll be censored anyways. So if you like what you see, hit the tip jar or share the video. That would be really appreciated. But anyways, I digress. A lot of people are talking about civil war these days. And people are thinking about it in the wrong way. We're not going to see a second civil war. If we see anything, we'll see a second Lincoln County war. Now, the Lincoln County wars took place in Lincoln County. I believe it was Arizona. It could have been New Mexico. I'm pretty sure it's Arizona. And basically, it was over how people were being treated. And people basically, instead of, there wasn't armies. There were people, you were living your life, and you were ducking gunshots. If we have a second civil war, that's what it's going to be like. Because we're not geographically divided like the last time. There's no north and south. There will not be an army of people on the right and an army of people on the left. And the U.S. Army splitting back and forth. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be someone's going to work and someone doesn't like them and someone shoots them. And then someone shoots the people who shot them back. It will be living every day in fear. It will be wondering if the truck will get to Market Basket with the supplies for the day. That's what it's going to be like. And a lot of the people who seem almost cavalier about it, can't wait for the shooting to start, don't realize that, you're not going to live the life you live. You're not going to live the easy life you have. Because this is going to start happening all over the place if it happens. This is a bad idea. That's why it's something to be avoided. And one of the reasons why it's to be avoided is all lives matter. All these lives that are going to be put in danger matter. But people do not, because people are not taught history, because they're taught activism instead of history in their schools, people don't understand the risk that they're taking. And I've already explained the risks that you have with your medical. If you medically, can you imagine the risk if you go to your hospital or go to the emergency room and you don't know if your life matters to the doctor, if the doctor is going to treat you one way or the other based on your politics? Imagine every aspect of your life that way. Imagine knowing that someone's watching, someone with a gun, willing to shoot you. I mean, look at what CNN and the and what's the name of that hydrocroc? How do you pronounce that, Valerie? Hydroxychloroquine. She's a nurse. She knows how to pronounce these things. For 4 months, we've been pounded by the left saying hydroxychloroquine is not a good thing. It'll kill you. It'll this. It'll that. And now we have a peer-reviewed study that shows exactly the opposite. The president was right all along. Now, I don't mind. Now let me be blunt about something. If you have if you have not had a peer-reviewed study, an actual scientific study done by actual science, not by money being given to you to try and get a particular result, you don't know for sure. It is perfectly valid for someone to say, well, there's not a study on this. I don't know. You might be right. You might not be right. But it's not perfectly valid to say this is going to kill you. You had major media literally pushing the idea that people should not use a drug that could save their lives during a pandemic because they were afraid it would help the president. Just like there are people who are upset about the new job numbers, which are through the roof. This is what a civil war is like. We're in a cold civil war right now. That's the truth is we're already in a civil war. Right now, there is a cold civil war. There is a cold civil war taking place right now. It won't take much for it to become hot. But if it becomes hot, it'll become hot in every little city, in every city, in every town. And wrong think will end up punished. And by the way, it won't matter what your 401k says because it'll be gone. It won't matter if you live behind a gated community because someone's going to bring in the food and someone's going to have to generate that electricity. And all it will take is a disruption in the food supply. I mean, you saw stores when things were slowed down. Imagine a trucker who won't go into a city because he's afraid of being shot. Imagine a farmer who can't bring his goods. Imagine an electrical out place. People are afraid to go in. People have no idea what the potential is. You really want to find out, find someone who's lived in an actual war zone and talk to them. I've talked to people. I've worked with people who've lived in war zones. You don't want this. It's not worth it. Just for political power. It's an amazing thing. But we are a republic. And because we're a republic, we get the government we deserve. And we get what we deserve. I'm just hoping we deserve better. But I got to tell you, normal people aren't going to put up with this forever. Normal people who have normal lives, who have jobs to go to, will put up with an awful lot. An awful lot. Because they're busy living their lives. But the moment they decide enough is enough, the result's going to be devastating. And it's not going to be happy. It's not going to be good. You're going to have to decide whether this is the America you want. May God help us make the right decision. Well, I want to thank you for joining me for this hour on the Tech Guy Off the Radio, as I've given up my chance to enter the latest Dynasty Baseball tournament, which starts in just starting right now. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry about the technical glitch at the beginning. Remember, if you liked what you saw, please share it. Please tell your friends, tell your enemies. Maybe they'll become friends. Leave comments, like the video, whatever. If you don't like it, leave your thumbs down. I mean, your opinion is just as valid as anyone else's. I thank you for your time. You have a great 4th of July weekend, and stay safe. Have a good one.